And it's goodbye from him. Comic genius Ronnie Corbett has died aged 85.
Here you are. 4 candles.
No, 4 candles.
Well, there you are, 4 candles.
A legend as one of the two Ronnies.
Mind you, when I think about it, and I often do,
And a master of the monologue. The giants pay tribute to the little man who made us laugh.
He was small in stature, but huge in talent and significant too, and a really nice man.
So tonight, Labour tells Cameron to get a grip over Tata Steel, as he insists nationalisation is not the answer.
It is a difficult situation. There can be no guarantees of success because of the problems that the steel industry faces worldwide.
From strike action to the courts, a fresh front in the junior doctors' battle over a new contract.
Baby gorilla nursed by his keepers while mum recovers from a most unusual birth.
This is the ITV Evening News with Alistair Stewart and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. At a desk next to Ronnie Barker, or in an armchair too big for him, Ronnie Corbett made us laugh. The two Ronnies ruled TV comedy for decades. Ronnie Corbett may have been short in stature, but the praise heaped upon him from the world of entertainment was for a giant of his trade.
Ronnie Corbett died this morning, aged 85. His wife, Anne, and his daughters, Emma and Sophie, were with him. An army of household names have been as one in celebrating his lifetime in entertainment. Paul Davis looks back.
mind you, when I think about it, and I often do,
For more than half a century, he made the nation laugh. His two Ronnies partnership with Ronnie Barker produced some of the most memorable sketches in the history of television comedy.
4 candles.
4 candles. Here you are. 4 candles.
No, 4 candles.
Well, there you are, 4 candles.
No, 4 candles. Handles for forks.
The two had first teamed up in the 60s, producing more comedy classics.
I look down on him because he is lower class. I am middle class. I know my place. I look up to them both. But I don't look up to him as much as I look up to him.
Although he found fame as the small half of a double act, Corbett had been a star in his own right, with numerous film and stage roles, this one alongside Danny LaRue.
Come to me, my little sugar plum. Sugar plum's a fairy. Any question?
A man who wrote many of Corbett's best-known lines paid this tribute.
The man just had funny bones. Ronnie had it. The two Ronnies had it, Eric and Ernie and Tommy Cooper and the great. There's something about them you can't analyse. They just walk on and you feel good.
Ronnie Corbett's contribution to the entertainment industry was recognised with a CBE in 2012, bestowed by the Queen, who admitted to being a fan. Today he was remembered with affection by old friend Sir Bruce Forsyth.
There'll only be one Ronnie in my mind. If anybody says Ronnie, I will think of him. I will think of his lovely little face when he laughs. That sort of the way he dressed sometimes with those loud socks on, and he was just a gem.
Is this the way to Amarillo?
After Ronnie Barker's death, Corbett continued working and helping charities, including an appearance in Peter Kay's version of Amarillo, remembered for a near disaster.
We're having a time of our lives with lovely Peter Kay on this treadmill, on this walking machine, and anyway, and we're really getting the swing of it and Peter's away, you know. And all of a sudden my little friend took off and he was horizontally. I could be fired from a gun. But we found, we picked him up, dressed him down, and he true pro. He went on and finished the gig. He was small in stature, but huge in talent and significant too.
Last year, Ronnie Corbett and his wife Anne Hart celebrated their golden wedding anniversary. She and his family were at his side when he died. He'd been suffering ill health for some time.
So now, for the last time, it is good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night.
He leaves 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie, both actresses.
The comedian and entertainer Ronnie Corbett, who died today.
Now, moving on, and there was no lifeline for Britain's steelworkers after today's crisis meeting at Downing Street. David Cameron said there could be no guarantees for success, and nationalisation was not, he said, the right answer.
Meanwhile, the pressure's mounting on the business secretary, Sajid Javid. He's returning from a trade mission to Australia, but it's emerged today that he took his daughter with him. Our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks, with the latest.
After a terrible 2 days for Port Talbot, there was little comfort for workers at the steel plant today. The Prime Minister is at least back from his holiday, arriving in the early hours to chair an emergency meeting with other ministers.
Minister, is this the end of the Welsh steel industry?
Among those hard at work in Downing Street, you wouldn't have spotted either the Chancellor or the Business Secretary. Both are yet to return to the UK. The Prime Minister's first act was to indicate nationalisation of the steel industry is not on the table.
I don't believe nationalisation is the right answer. What we want to do is secure a long-term future for Port Talbot. We're going to work very hard with the company to do everything we can. But it is a difficult situation. There can be no guarantees of success because of the problems that the steel industry faces worldwide.
The future of tens of thousands of jobs in Tata's UK operations depends on a buyer coming forward, but any potential buyer faces a number of problems. Tata now estimates the value of its UK steel interests as almost zero, and it's revealed the business is currently losing £1 million per day in the UK. A new owner could also be liable for the huge pension deficit for its workers, thought to be around £500 million. The Labour leader has accused the government of having no plan to safeguard jobs.
These are people that have given their lives to that industry. Are they to be thrown on the scrap heap of a multinational corporation, or is the British government going to intervene and maintain steelmaking in Britain? It's a very simple choice.
With the government accused of being caught on the hop by Tata's decision, attention is focusing on the absent business secretary. He took his daughter with him on this official trip to Australia instead of lobbying Tata in India.
For him to have not been engaged in work, in entirely work-related activities, I think compounds that error of judgment, and I have therefore suggested that he may wish to consider his position.
Mr Javid will visit Port Talbot tomorrow. The government claims it's been instrumental in gaining breathing space to find a buyer. The signs are, with Tata's losses mounting daily, that breathing space will not last for long.
The government is very keen to look as though it's whirring into action now, but it's hard to imagine how it didn't see this coming. Union reps and Port Talbot's local MP went to India to talk to Tata. No minister bothered. Now the entire British steel industry is on the brink, with hopes dependent on finding a buyer whose current owners have all but written it off.
Romilly, thank you.
And it is not only the 15,000 steelworkers employed by Tata Steel whose jobs are at stake. There are thousands more employed in businesses which depend on the steel industry. Our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn has been to meet some of them.
The supply chain, the companies and people who help to drive a business, but aren't necessarily directly employed by it. They're integral to the steel industry and face the same uncertainty as Tata's employees. Around 150 of the 600 staff employed by Owens Transport depend on steel. The company can offer little reassurance to them.
We've made plans, reinvested in equipment. It's like the truck behind us now. We're talking there, one truck 100k, 10 trucks £1 million. You know what I mean? And we've got 240 of those involved with the steel industry, so you can work out, you know what I mean, the numbers side of it. And it's a very, very difficult time.
10 minutes from Port Talbot, and this steel fabrication firm is so far weathering the storm and using Tata Steel from Scunthorpe to do it. They have orders to fulfil and are trying to help those in trouble.
We've taken on 2 boys who did work for somebody near Port Talbot, so, you know, we are trying our best to help everybody out.
Even if this plant can be saved, there are still jobs being lost now and no doubt more to come. As thousands queue for hundreds of jobs at Aston Martin in Cardiff over the last 2 days, the worry is South Wales is already unable to find jobs for all, and that's without thousands of steel workers flooding the market. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Port Talbot.
Junior doctors opened up a new front in their fight against the government today. They are taking legal action over the Health Secretary's decision to impose a new contract in England. Well, our political correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones joins us live from St Thomas's Hospital in London. Lewis, what's the basis of the action?
Alistair, the doctors have tried criticising the government. They've tried going on strike. Now they're trying this legal action. The basis is a judicial review. They want to ask questions about the way, the process that the government employed before they imposed this contract. Specifically, they want to ask questions about equalities and discrimination legislation. So it is slightly technical, but it is the latest weapon that they're deploying. Now, you will remember, of course, the junior doctors have been on strike quite a few times recently. There is a lot of anger about the fact this contract has been imposed and also some of the nature of it. And just a quick statement for you from them. The decision to plough ahead with this imposition of an unfair contract that junior doctors have no confidence in and have roundly rejected is a sign of a total failure on the government's part.
Lewis, thank you.
At least 14 people have been killed after a partially constructed flyover collapsed in the Indian city of Kolkata. More than 100 people are feared to be trapped after the concrete and steel bridge fell onto a busy road. Firefighters and residents used their bare hands to try to free people from the wreckage.
A first, perhaps, for US presidential hopeful Donald Trump. He's been squirming to get out of a hole he dug for himself on the sensitive issue of abortion.
Yes, an outcry of anger, including from within his own Republican Party, followed his remark last night that women who have abortions should be punished if they're made illegal. He later corrected himself, but as Juliet Bremner reports from the United States, that did not stop the headlines.
Damage control, where backtrack from Donald Trump after...
Just when you thought Donald Trump couldn't shock anymore,
he is fumbling for the reverse gear. The Republican frontrunner igniting a firestorm.
He's back in the headlines with these comments on abortion.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
Despite issuing a statement saying he meant doctors, not women, should be punished, he's managed to unite both pro- and anti-abortion campaigners.
We would not advocate any form of punishment for a woman who's made such a desperate and sad choice as abortion.
He'd already been struggling to win over women. Polls showing 3 out of 4 won't vote for him.
Almost everything he says is derogatory towards women, and I don't think that. I know there are some women who support him, but I think there's a lot of reasons not to.
I actually think he's an idiot. I was appalled to listen to him. Once again, he proved that he doesn't know anything about laws in the United States.
His attempts to woo women so far failing.
By the way, nobody respects women more than Donald Trump. That I can tell you. Nobody.
Every time that Donald Trump has said something offensive, he's refused to apologise. Until now, he's been quick to backtrack this time, perhaps sensing he's crossed some kind of line in the eyes of American voters.
After months of defying all expectations, perhaps this is the moment when Trump's meteoric rise has begun to falter. Juliet Bremner, ITV News, Washington.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News. We investigate whether or not leaving the European Union will push up the cost of holidays.
And 6 months to the Rio Olympics, a special report from Brazil on the threat from the Zika virus.
Once the athletes arrive here, it's vital they can concentrate fully on their sport and winning medals and not be distracted by concerns over their health and their safety.
That story and much more after the break.
Hello and welcome back. The boss of one of Europe's biggest low-cost airlines has told ITV News that leaving the EU would not necessarily mean the end of cheap air travel. Other carriers, though, have different views. Budget flights tap into a huge and highly competitive travel market within the EU. 76% of UK holidays abroad are within the EU. 68% of business visits from the UK are to the EU, and the average cost of a flight from the UK to the EU is £86. For the latest in our series leading up to the EU referendum, our business editor Joel Hills looks at how the travel industry views the question of remain or leave.
School's out, time to get away from it all. Record numbers of us now travel abroad. Britain's membership of the single market has delivered lower fares and a greater choice of destinations. And those who want us to stay in the EU will tell you these are under threat if we leave.
What we don't want to see is travel going back to being a privilege of the rich. You know, it's become something that is available to many people who could never have afforded to travel in the past, and we certainly don't want to go back to that.
Indeed not, but how likely is it that Brexit would leave travellers worse off? Jeanette Wilson and Rita Tennell are off to Cyprus. As British nationals and EU citizens, their passports guarantee them entry to any of the 27 other countries in the EU without restriction. They're eligible for compensation from airlines and ferry operators for delays and cancellations. And with a European health insurance card, they qualify for free medical treatment abroad. If Britain leaves the EU, these rights would disappear after 2 years unless they were renegotiated.
My sister, once abroad, you had to go into hospital, didn't you? And it was perfect. She had her E111 card.
I was in for one night in the hospital and it cost over £1,000 and insurance covered it.
The point is we've no idea what Brexit would look like, and doubts about the future are already affecting holidays. In the last few months, the pound has fallen sharply in value against the euro and the dollar. Now, the Bank of England is clear that it's the prospect of the referendum and the uncertainty that that throws up that's in large part to blame. That's great news, of course, for visitors to Britain, but for Brits headed abroad, not so great. The single market opened up the skies above the European Union, allowing airlines to fly wherever they chose. Budget carriers were born. EasyJet was one of them, and it will tell you Britain's future outside the EU would be bleaker. But Norway isn't in the EU, and it hasn't stopped Norwegian Air becoming Europe's third largest airline. The boss believes Britain is better off in, but he told me that the outcome of the referendum won't affect his expansion plans here. If Britain leaves the EU, will you employ fewer people in Britain?
No, we will. I have 30 Dreamliners coming in there. I need at least 50, 60.
Will you fly fewer routes?
No, I will fly the same amount of routes. That I will definitely do.
Would your prices go up?
No, I don't think so. We are in here for providing low fare to everybody.
From planes to trains to ferries, membership of the single market has transformed the way we travel. But now Britain sits in the departure lounge. Leaving the EU would be a trip into the unknown, but it doesn't follow that the benefits membership has delivered would automatically be undone. Joel Hills, ITV News.
Police have released footage of a new tool they're using to help them during raids, a chainsaw. Officers from South Wales Police sliced this door down in 15 seconds during a raid in Cardiff, then, perhaps to deter future offenders, tweeted the video.
And the architect Dame Zaha Hadid, who designed the Aquatic Centre for the 2012 London Olympics, has died from a heart attack. She was 65.
In Rio, British Olympic officials have seen for themselves the precautions being taken against the Zika virus. On a fact-finding visit 6 months before the Games, they said it would be up to individual athletes to decide whether to compete. From Rio, our sports editor Steve Scott has this special report.
Despite the unprecedented recession here and allegations of corruption over some construction contracts, Rio is all but ready for its summer showpiece. It has overcome similar problems to previous host cities, but beyond that it faces issues peculiar to this country. And top of the list is the Zika virus. A party of British Olympic officials has just finished a week's recce here. In that short time, 142 new suspected cases of the virus have been reported. 37 of those have already been confirmed. On the face of it, the fight against this epidemic feels inadequate, but failure to control the outbreak could deter not only tourists, but potentially athletes too, particularly women.
We are not going to push anybody to come here and to compete. It has to be their own choice. But as I said, we feel confident that if they follow the strategies that we understand from the experts, that they can come out here and compete, knowing that they've taken every precaution that they need to take.
During the Games, this will be a common sight at all venues, and organisers hope a reassuring one. Standing water, where the Zika-carrying mosquito breeds best, surrounds the athletes' village. After some pressure, organisers have agreed to install air conditioning here and place mesh over any open windows. For Team GB officials, preparing the ground now ahead of the Games is one thing, but once the athletes arrive here, it's vital they can concentrate fully on their sport and winning medals and not be distracted by concerns over their health and their safety. Rio's natural amphitheatres will provide stunning backdrops to many events, no more so than the venue for both rowing and the canoe sprints. But, like the sailing location, water quality here, caused by the city's sewage system and the subsequent risk of infection, has been a concern for some time.
It's something we're aware of, very, very aware in our sport. But they have been cleaning it up. I mean, my first visit 6-7 years ago, it is significantly better now than it was then.
The British delegation left Brazil with few lingering worries, and if it stays that way, next time they get here, it will be the sport that focuses them and nothing else. Steve Scott, ITV News, Rio de Janeiro.
And finally, we can bring you an update now on the baby gorilla whose birth we told you about just last month. Afia was born to mum Kira in a rare emergency caesarean operation carried out at Bristol Zoo.
Well, almost 2 months on, Afia is making great progress, venturing into the outside world for the first time today. The staff perhaps proving that their mothering instincts go beyond humanity.
Very sweet. And that is all for now. Tom Bradby will be here with news at 10.
But from the whole team, a very good evening to you.
Bye-bye.